Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by best-selling author of romance, science fiction, and fantasy, Alexis Hall. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Let's jump right in. Let's start with your next publication, which is coming out as of us talking, I think. Hell's Heart, out on March 10th in the US, March 12th in the UK. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, really short version. It's Sapphic Moby Dick in space. Really long version is it's Sapphic Moby Dick in space. It's set in a sort of a post-Earth dystopian deep future, in which we're reduced to hunting psychic space whales for their brain juice in order to fuel the rapacious hyper-capitalist society that we live in.
Okay. Sounding a bit like June in parts there as well with the world building.
Thank you. I do try to be derivative.
What?
I'm sorry. That was a flippant, self-deprecating joke. It's absolutely fine to make comparisons. There is nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what was it about? Were you like rereading Moby Dick and you kind of inspired to do this, or what kind of suddenly made you think this seems like a cool twist on an old classic?
So there is normally I don't have an interesting book story. There actually is an interesting book story here. Back in 2020, you might remember there was COVID.
Yes,
and
I remember.
Lockdown happened, and I thought to myself, I know what I'll do. I'll get a famously long book, because I actually at the time hadn't read Moby Dick. I think like Americans always do it in school. I think in this country we don't so much. And what I'll do is I'll read a chapter of Moby Dick every day, and then when the lockdown ends and I haven't finished Moby Dick yet, it'll seem like it went really quickly. Yeah, spoiler, that didn't work, because Moby Dick has 135 chapters and lockdown was not 135 days. But I've read Moby Dick a chapter a day, and I tweeted about, and apologies to people who feel this is disrespectful to the literature, but I tweeted about the silly bits and like the bits that are, a bit suggestive sounding, and the bits where Melville gets weirdly obsessed with flukes, which happens a lot. And there wound up being sort of this is back when I was still on, the platform now known as X, the platform formerly known as Prince, which I am no longer on for reasons. And there was a little like kind of group of people who were like reading along with me, and we were bantering with each other about flukes mostly. And that because I'm a professional novelist, I think anytime you consume anything, maybe this is just me, you think, how would I turn this into a book? And I had the original thought of like, well, you could do it fantasy and their dragons, but that didn't really speak to me. I was like, or you could go completely bizarre with it and do their hunting space whales on Jupiter. So that's what I did.
I like that. I mean, it's a very cool. It's a cool world building. It's a cool idea, and it makes sort of sense. It's weirdly historical whilst also being futuristic, if that makes sense.
No, that was very much the intent. So
yeah,
one of the things I mentioned when I'm talking about this book is that part of the reason I went with Tor is because when I was initially pitching this to my now editor, they kind of held up their fingers in a triangle and said that they thought what was interesting about the book was that it forms a triangle where you've got the real world we currently live in and Moby Dick and the science fiction world of the book, and the book kind of exists as the intersection between those three things.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. I saw on your press release, Sarah Gailey described it as Moby Dick meets Treasure Planet by way of Fleabag.
Yes. Yeah, I've had some. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's a great description. That's all I was going to say. Just a fantastic pitch.
There's some really lovely like blurbs for this book. The one I want to get on a T-shirt is Faye Funny and Extremely Metal.
That's great. This is just a way to describe you as a person in general. But am I right in thinking? So this is the first of 4 books that you have coming out this year?
Oh gosh, I think so. Yes, I've got a lot of books coming out this year. It might be first of. I think it's the first of 3 books I've got coming out this year.
Oh, cool. I found. So this is coming out in March. You've got Never After coming out in April.
Yes.
Father Material coming out in June.
Yes.
And then The Hopeless Romantic's Guide to Enchantment coming out in September.
Oh yes. Sorry, Hopeless Romantic. Sorry, I've got a short story in The Hopeless Romantic's Guide to Enchantment. That's why I wasn't counting it, because that's not my book. That's an anthology that I have a short story in. Thank God, I thought I'd missed a full length novel. I have quite a high output, but.
I mean, even 3 novels is an incredible output. Like, where do you find the time to write that much? So
I do. So first of all, I do now do this full time. I think also what counts as high volume varies a lot depending on what subgenre you're in.
Okay.
So obviously, Hell's Heart is science fiction, and in the SSF genre, then like kind of even 1 book a year is quite a high cadence. There are some authors for whom 1 book every 10 years is quite a high cadence. Whereas I started out mostly working in romance, and in romance, if you haven't written a book in the last 6 months, people kind of assume you're dead. So I've always just kind of got used to it, and I'd love to be able to say something that I'm sure you haven't heard like a million times before, but build a habit, write every day, and that's genuinely how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I've had lots of romance authors on, and like, not only is it like the turnover very quick, but there's a seasonality to it. And there's a lot of romance authors who write like a Christmas book and then they write a summer book, and that's continues on every year.
No, exactly.
So this is literally the rate at which you write. This isn't like,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there can be various logistical reasons why someone has written several books over the course of some years and then they will come out once.
So the one like thing I kind of thought was temporary, and I think I do think my cadence might slow down a bit in the coming years, although I've been thinking this for a while, is so I started out with a small press and didn't get mainstream published for quite a while, and my first my first book that really hit with a mainstream audience was Boyfriend Material, and that created a lot of opportunities for me. But particularly at the time, because actually again, the time it hit was kind of COVID era, I was very much in this, this is an opportunity that could go away at any moment kind of space. So I frantically said yes to everything and was still in the... Backing up slightly, prior to that hitting, I was very much in a situation where you would send like 10 queries and get like 8 rejections.
Sure.
And
to agents we're talking about.
Oh no! Sorry, no, I had an agent at that point to publishers.
Oh, to publishers, right.
Yeah, or 10 pitches if you'd rather. And after Boyfriend Material, when I had more of a reputation, suddenly you'd send out like kind of 10 pitches and get like 5 rejections, which is still a lot, but please don't take these numbers as gospel. This is purely for flavor. But basically it meant that suddenly I was getting a lot more stuff accepted, whereas previously I was very used to being in like a throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks kind of space.
Sure.
So I suddenly had a lot of people saying, yes, we'd like to do this. And I was like, well, I better do it now because everything could go away overnight.
So you sort of like committed to it because you were worried it would go, but then you've actually just kind of fallen into that cadence and been like,
pretty much, yeah,
sort of assumed it was the norm.
Yeah.
But I mean, your output is rivaling like Brandon Sanderson. I mean, it's a lot of words.
to be fair, I think my books are slightly shorter than Brand Sands, but thank you, that's a flattering comparison.
Yeah, his are chunky. I'll give him that. So I mean, to keep up this kind of rate, you must have, I would imagine, you have a pretty good process locked in. Are you someone that plans all of these before you start writing them?
Oh, this is the infamous plotter pantser question, isn't it? And
it is.
It's so one of my most annoying habits is that I'm a very reject the premise person. I really like editors. Part of the reason I'm in traditional publishing rather than self-publishing is I like having an editor. And so for me, writing is rewriting. And so I don't really see a distinction between having an idea what a book's going to be like before you start writing it and having a book of what a book's going to be like after you submitted the first draft and got heavy dev edits, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I understand.
Like it's because it's all sort of the same thing. it does vary a bit genre to genre. I'll have an idea of what a book is about. I'll usually have a really broad scale idea of the plot, in the very rough what happens in it. This will usually include what happens in the end, but won't always. And obviously, if you're working in romance, then you kind of know what kind of editing you're working towards.
Yes.
And because I think the other thing is that because I'm a big believer in demystifying writing. And so to me, I think it's really important to recognize that the bulk of the work of writing is the graft. It's the actual words on page. It's my answer to the what's the most challenging thing to write question is always it's getting someone to walk from a door to a window.
Yeah.
Because saying Steve, who was standing by the door, went and stood by the window sounds clunky and awful, and so you say Steve walked from the door, and you come up with like a dozen different iterations. So the thing about the plot about his Panther thing is that to me it places too much emphasis on the big picture stuff, and maybe just because I think it's often hard to value stuff you find personally easy, and I personally find the big picture stuff, write a book about hunting psychic space whales on Jupiter, quite easy, whereas I find the microcosm, like, what dialogue tag should I use in this paragraph, and can I make sure that these 3 lines don't all start the same way, quite difficult. And because I value the detail-oriented side of things, and obviously you can't either really plot or pants detail-oriented.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I understand loosely what I think you're getting at is, and I've had this discussion with people before where it's like, in some ways you can argue that there is no plotter and pantser. It's just like, if your plan is just your vomit draft, it's just it has a slightly different form.
Exactly.
To some degree. When it comes to the concepts, obviously it's a little bit different with Hell's Heart. But the kind of inception point, is it usually like a character or a setting, or does it tend to vary depending on whatever the story is?
It varies from story to story, because, for example, if it's a contemporary romance, the setting is usually almost always present day England. I think for me it's less character or setting than it is premise, is what I'd say. I'd use the phrase high concept, but that's got a really technical meaning in publishing, and a lot of my books aren't particularly what you'd call high concept. Mm-hmm. So, like, boyfriend material is, it's fake dating is what, and it was, how do I do a fake dating rom-com that works for a gay protagonist and evokes the vibes of what I remember of rom-coms from the 90s. And then the characters and the settings and the environments all come out of there. For Hell's Heart, obviously it's sapphic Moby Dick in space, and obviously a lot of the plot of that is set by being based on Moby Dick.
Yeah.
For the Mortal Follies series, the premise was queer magic Bridgerton. And again, and from there you go to, okay, what's the and so I don't know if you're familiar with the series, but one of the framing devices of that series is that it's narrated by Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream, and part of the reason for that is that I wanted something that had like the vibes of the Lady Whistledown thing in Bridgerton, only taken slightly too far, because I always take it slightly too far. And everything kind of span off from there. Okay. So it's how to best deliver on the short pitch sentence that I have in my head.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like everything comes to you as kind of like a quite a marketable pitch in some ways, where it's like, oh, it's a twist on this or a twist on that.
Pretty much. I think partly because I am not at the stage of my career, and I will probably never be at the stage of my career where I can just sell stuff on purely my name alone. So I do have to kind of say that I think there's a selection bias issue, in the sense that, like, part of the reason it feels like stuff comes to me as a marketable pitch is that anything that doesn't come to me as a marketable pitch doesn't have a marketable pitch, and then it doesn't get sold, and therefore you'll never read it.
Yeah, and I'm sure your agent and even like editors who are trying to pitch it to the rest of their team will appreciate that you're giving them something that they could quite quickly like package and present.
That is always the plan. It sometimes works.
You mentioned most of your romances are set contemporary England, but
Yes.
your books publish in the US.
Yes.
Do you have is there like does it sort of work in your favor that there's the sort of the anglified version of that? Like, does that seem like fun to US audiences, or do you have to change stuff?
I think so. I think I mean it's definitely something I have consciously made part of my brand. Mm-hmm. It's had advantages and there have been struggles. Like I had to fight for quite a while to get them to stop like Americanizing my spelling, and even like I've even occasionally had situations where like I've had like copy editors quote unquote correcting British phrases to their American equivalents, which I was not a fan of, and I've had conversations about apologies with that. But in terms of like audience response, I do think that yes, I think I probably do benefit from the I love your accent effect, as it were.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. But I mean, presumably changing things like color and things like that, where there's like a letter or two different, are you fighting for it to stay as the English spelling even in the US probably?
I like that to stay with the English spelling personally. Okay. And I will freely admit that stuff like that, yeah, it's a spelling thing. It matters less, but it's clear what it means. I think Americans can cope.
Yes. Yeah, sure. It's more like when a character is speaking and they say something like sidewalk all of a sudden, and that kind of completely takes you out of the geography of the whole thing. Yeah, I understand that. Am I right in thinking that the 3 books you've coming out this year, are they all coming out with different publishers?
Yes. So Hell's Heart is partly obviously because I'm at least 2 of them working for really different genres. Right. So Hell's Heart is coming out with Tor, Father Material is coming out with Source Books, and Never After is Montlake.
Wow, you really keep giving your agent a lot, keeping her busy.
Yes, very much so.
We're going to get a bit more into that in a minute, but we have reached the point where I must ask you, Alexis, if you were snowed in at a cozy woodland cabin in the middle of nowhere, which book would you hope to have with you?
Okay, I have 2 answers for this because I thought you might reject the first one. As you might have noticed, I'm a massive overthinker.
Okay.
So even for, and I think this is worse for Desert Island, but I think even being snowed in somewhere, I am very much of the opinion that I don't want to associate something I really strongly care about with a negative experience. Mm-hmm. And I know it's a cozy cabin, so it's less bad than it could be, but. So I think I'd want something that would like occupy my mind for the time that then I'd be completely happy to never look at again. So my first choice, and again, please feel free to veto this, is Creature of Havoc, the fighting fantasy novel where you are a monster.
What? Wait, I've actually not heard of this.
Oh god, so are you familiar with fighting fantasy?
No. I was just Googling it. Single player role playing game book.
Yeah, so Fighting Fantasy, it was like an 80s, 90s. It was really, really big in the UK. I'm not sure how much it cracked the States. It was by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone, the guys that also founded Games Workshop. And there were millions of these things. And Creature of Havoc's arguably the most innovative one. It kind of doesn't entirely work. You start off as literally a monster, like you've been transformed by an evil wizard. And the way these books work is so. For any Americans in the audience, it's like choose your own adventure, but with dice.
Okay.
And you go through and you make choices, and some things attack you, and you have to fight them with a really tedious combat system that everyone just cheats on.
Sure.
But Creature of Havoc is bizarre. Like you start without the ability to like understand language, and everything is written in this sort of not exactly conlang, but sort of a code that once they've explained to you how it works, you can go back and you can read it. And even the stuff from the beginning, like you can look at it and it does make sense. And like you don't have free will at the beginning. You have to make choices again by rolling randomly, which means that if you roll wrong, the game is just unwinnable.
Okay.
And I have never finished Creature of Havoc because it's a bit of a nightmare. But if I was trapped in a cabin then actually I think that'd be a really good way to pass the time, and I'd be okay to never look at it again. I think also the other thing is that maybe just for me, I find winter a very fantasy coded time.
Sure, yeah, I can see that.
I think if I was like, one of the things I actually will sometimes do in like kind of in winter is I'll just sit down and like draw D&D maps and things. Like if I'm ever pitching a new D&D campaign to my friends, it'll be in the winter.
Right.
It will run for months. So I think it would actually be quite a nice way to while away the time.
Yeah, I can see that. That's cool. And I mean, things like lit RPG are having a moment at the moment. So this kind of thing, you never know, it could be coming back into fashion.
I kind of they are still in print, like because they've been lapsing in that print since like the 80s. I think Rhianna Pratchett did a new one fairly recently.
Okay.
It's like for nerds of a certain generation, for fighting fantasy has this kind of intense nostalgia thing. Okay. Well, I would not reject that. That's a very cool and unique choice from me, but I would love to hear what your backup choice was. So the backup choice would have been Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco for sort of parallel reasons in some ways. In that if I'm locked in a house for an indefinite amount of time, then a really dense book that I can go a bit weird with and just spend hours trying to draw maps of the Ediphikium, I think is a good choice.
Yeah. Okay, well, you've given yourself. I think these are two great choices because they are expansive, and giving yourselves lots of room to like sit with them and like go over them and start again, especially with Creatures of Havoc.
Yeah.
Okay, very unique. I love that.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to get into more publishing bits, like how Alexis got his foot in the door, finding an agent, working with multiple publishers. That will all be in the extended episode at www.patreon.com/right and wrong. I imagine that's probably not what you imagined when you thought you'd be an author. And she was like, well, it's been really great. And also, just because they started as audio only doesn't mean that, they're not. We are going to get the paperbacks and hardbacks out afterwards. We're just doing it in a different order than is the traditional route. So I think
exactly.
If you're open to success might not look exactly how you think it might when you first come into this, then that can also open doors, because it's an industry where there's constantly seems to be new kind of areas and new directions that you can get into it.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's a great piece of advice. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me and telling us all about your kind of journey and your experiences with writing and publishing. It's been awesome chatting with you.
No, it's wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
And for everyone listening, Hell's Heart is out March 10th in the US, March 12th in the UK. And if you want to keep up with what Alexis is doing, you can follow him on Instagram at Quikunquevolt.
Roughly, yes. Don't worry, it's hard to. No one can pronounce it. I should have picked a more pronounceable Instagram handle.
But you can just look, if you just Google Alexis Hall, most likely you'll find him, and you'll also find the website, which is also similarly Latin.
Yeah, my apologies.
The SEO
I'm very
is good.
Googleable.
Google Alexis Hall. To support this podcast, like, follow, and subscribe. Join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Alexis, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.